In at number 10, we have the Microraptors. Firstly, the Microraptor does not deal significant damage, especially when compared to other creatures of similar size or role. They are relatively fragile and can be easily killed in combat, making them less useful as a combat mount or ally. Microraptors can only be ridden by a single person, limiting their utility for transportation or combat compared to larger creatures that carry multiple riders. Can't ride this thing, so overall they're difficult to tame, they have limited utility, and a single rider mount. What are you doing, AI? You can't ride these things. Look how tiny they are. Right, we have the Chaak Ethereum, and while the Chaak Ethereum has range attacks with its boulder throwing ability, its damage output isn't as high as some other creatures of a similar size in direct combat. It may not excel against stronger opponents. The boulder throwing attack has a slow firing rate, making it less effective in fast-paced battles or against agile enemies. Its movement speed is relatively slow compared to some other creatures, which can make it less desirable for transportation or quick travel. There are herbivores that prefer beer as their preferred taming food, which might be more challenging or time-consuming to obtain compared to some other foods. While they can gather loads of thatch and wood with their attacks, there are other creatures which are more efficient at those tasks. So overall, the Chaak Ethereum is often perceived as less versatile or useful in various situations compared to other tames available in the game. However, its unique abilities and appearance still might be appealing for players with specific preferences or those looking for a different tame experience. Now, just from personal experience here, yes, the beer is a little bit of an odd thing to tame it with, but if you learn that boulder ability, it can be an extremely useful one, and its damage and movement speed, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty good. So AI, I think you got it a little bit wrong on that one, but overall, I guess it kind of makes sense why this creature's on the list. Next up, we have the Oviraptor, and firstly, they're not strong combat creatures, and they lack significant offense or defense capabilities, making them less useful in battles compared to other tames. And also, the primary benefit of an Oviraptor is the ability to increase nearby egg laying speed and reduce egg incubation time allowed for dinos. However, this utility might not be as essential in every player's gameplay style or progression. Overall, Oviraptors might seem less desirable for players focused on combat-orientated creatures or those looking for tames with broader utility beyond egg-related benefits. However, they can still be useful for players focusing on breeding and egg production, as it can significantly speed up egg-leg incubation processes for nearby dinosaurs. In at number 7, we have the Ichthyosaurus. Firstly, it lacks significant combat abilities and strength. They're not powerful in combat situations and can be easily overwhelmed by stronger predators. They have relatively low health and defense stats, making them vulnerable to attacks, especially from larger and more aggressive ocean creatures. Ichthyosaurus is an aquatic creature and cannot survive on land. This limitation restricts their utility compared to other creatures which can move on both land and in water. They also have a limited carry weight, which means they can't transport much inventory for resources, reducing their ability for hauling items. And while they're decently fast underwater, their speed may not be sufficient to outrun some of the faster ocean predators. Overall, the Ichthyosaurus' limitation in combat, survivability, and restricted mobility make them less versatile compared to some other aquatic creatures like Megalodons or Mosasaurs, which possess better combat abilities, higher health, and greater utility both underwater and on the surface. However, their smaller size and speed can make them suitable for quick underwater transportation for players in the early stages of the game, or specific tasks requiring maneuverability in aquatic environments. Also, just does the AI think that Megalodons can go on land? Because Megalodons don't really have greater utility on the surface. I don't really know what it means by that. Next up, we have the Carb Enemies, and while it has decent health and can soak up damage, its offensive capabilities are relatively weak compared to other creatures of similar size. It may take longer to defeat enemies in combat. The Carb Enemies is relatively slow on both land and water. Its sluggish movement makes it less efficient for transportation compared to faster creatures. It has a unique ability to gather large amounts of berries and thatch, which can be useful early in game. However, as players progress, other creatures or tools become more efficient at resource gathering tasks. Despite its high health pool, it lacks the speed to evade threats, making it vulnerable to faster predators. While it has a saddle and can carry items, its low movement speed and carry weight limit its use for transporting resources. Due to these reasons, the Carb Enemies might be perceived as less versatile compared to other tames that offer better combat abilities, faster movement, or specialized utility. However, its high health and resource gathering abilities can still make it useful in specific situations, especially for newer players or for tasks where its unique capabilities are beneficial. So, like, why are you putting this on the worst Ark creatures list? And you're going back on all the points here. And I don't know why it wants every creature to be really good at combat, because not every creature is going to be good at combat, and you don't need good combat creatures for everything. I don't know why AI is always just like, oh yeah, the reason why it's bad, can't do damage, can't go that fast, can't carry as many resources. Because like the Osaurus, great mobility, I don't really know what to talk about there. And the Carb Enemies, it's pretty good at transporting resources, it's got a very decent weight stat. In at number 5 is the Pachy. And the first thing, it has a charging attack which can stun smaller creatures and knock back enemies. Its damage output and effectiveness in combat against larger and more powerful creatures are relatively low though, and this makes it less useful in more challenging battles. Pachys have relatively low health and are not very durable compared to many other creatures. This makes them vulnerable in combat situations, especially against other stronger opponents. Beyond its charge attack and some minor gathering abilities such as collecting thatch, Pachys do not offer diverse or significant utility compared to some other tames. While they're relatively fast on land, their speed may not be sufficient for efficient transportation compared to other faster creatures available in the game. Pachys are small creatures with limited carrying capacity, which can make them less practical for holding large amounts of resources. Due to these factors, the Pachy is often perceived as less versatile or less useful in various situations compared to other tames available in the game. I feel like it says that sentence a lot, by the way. However, some players might still find them interesting or useful for specific tasks or personal preferences, especially in the early stages of the game. I just feel like that ending part for most of these creatures are just like, well, they can still be useful for specific players. Maybe not with the Pachy though. In at number 4 we have the Dimorphodon, and before we get any further, I completely disagree with this placement. Dimorphodons are small and relatively fragile creatures. They can be easily killed in combat situations due to their low health and defense, making them very vulnerable to attacks. While they can be effective in groups due to their ability to swarm enemies and deal damage collectively, individually their attack power and survivability are quite low. So due to these factors, they're perceived as less versatile or less useful. No, these things are amazing. They deal so much damage, and they deal rider damage even if they're on a mount. It's amazing. Right, this may not be Syntech's favourite, but in at number 3 we have the Galley. The Galley has weak combat abilities and relatively low health, making it unsuitable for fighting against most predators in the game. It's more of a passive, non-combative creature. It's relatively fragile and can be easily killed by larger predators if it gets into combat situations, further limiting its survivability. While it has decent speed, its carrying capacity is limited. This makes it less efficient for transporting resources compared to other creatures that are faster and can carry more. And like the Galley's carry weight actually isn't that bad when I think about it. And what creatures are really faster than the Galley on land? Yes, flyers faster, but on land this thing is one of the fastest out there, so a bit off with that one, in my opinion. It's also a herbivore, so it lacks the ability to gather resources efficiently, unlike some other creatures that excel at gathering specific resources. Okay, a bit of a useless point. Either way, the main advantage to the Galley is its speed, which makes it one of the fastest land creatures in the game. However, its speed might not compensate for its lack of combat ability or utility for some players' needs. You're not going to tame the Galley if you want a combat creature. You can tell they're wimpy at combat just from their design and just how little health they have. Like, if you use trank arrows on this thing, most of the time you're just going to kill it. Like, end of. So you kind of want trank darts for it. So, end of, really. Their health is wimpy. You're not really taming that for that. You're taming it for the speed. And because Syntech told you to. Either way, due to the reasons, the Gallimimus may be perceived as less versatile or less useful in various situations. Again, the AI is saying the same thing at the end, so I'm not going to reiterate. The Galley is in at number 3, I guess. In at number 2, we have the Pego. The first one, which, you know, I actually agree with this one. The Pego has a unique ability to steal items from players from their inventories. This can be highly frustrating for players, as it might steal valuable or essential items, making it an annoyance rather than a beneficial tame. Also, just to add a point, sometimes, like pretty much all of my Pego tames have been on accident when I've had berries in my last slot. Anyone else out there as well? You only tame these things on accident. You don't actually go out and tame these things. At least, I hope you don't. Don't do that. While they can attack and defend themselves to some extent, their combat abilities are relatively weak compared to other creatures. They are easily killed by stronger predators. Also, they're small creatures with low health and low defense. They can be easily killed by larger predators. They can be challenging to tame due to their small size, fast movement, and tendency to flee when attacked. You don't knock these things out. They're so easy to tame. Just put berries in the last spot on your hotbar and go up to one. It will pounce at you. Boom. Tamed. Maybe you have to do that a couple of times. It's really not that difficult. And also, they don't offer much utility beyond their theft ability compared to some other tames. They lack significant gathering abilities or combat prowess, making them less desirable for various tasks. Also, when recording this B-roll, I never realised that when you set a Pego on wandering, it would actually gather berries. I don't know. That was something that surprised me today. Did it surprise you today? Because I didn't know Pegos did that. And in at number 1, we have the Dodo. Why did you do this, AI? You were going to cause absolute havoc in the comments, by the way. Either way, Dodos have very low health, damage output, low movement speed, and they're one of the weakest creatures in the game. Beyond being one of the earliest creatures that players encounter and a source of basic resources like meat, hide, and some prime meat, Dodos don't give prime meat. Dodos lack significant utility unless they possess any special abilities, and their small size limits their carrying capacity. Also, just to add to the prime meat thing, baby Dodos do give prime meat, adult Dodos don't. Only on ASA, of course, because babies are insane prime meat farms. Also, they're easy to tame and provide a basic resource for new players. Their taming offers little advantage though, compared to some other tames available in the game's early stages. As players progress, Dodos generally become obsolete for any significant task due to their roles and low stats of special abilities. All the way through to the late game, the Dodos are great at gathering kibble, by the way. I love the Dodo. Right, well that was definitely something for today's video. I think it got it a little bit more wrong than the best tames, like most of them apart from the Pego. Maybe shouldn't be on this list. Either way, today I get it right. And what is your least favourite Ark Tame? And I'll see you all later.